Now welcome back to the fourth and I think the climax sketch of the six sketches. This particular sketch was called Blind Horror, and Blind Horror talked about an inevitable stage which most students or most persons who go out there, I feel, face, which is the inevitable depression. The yes, hey, the depression, guys. There's a lot to talk about there, and I feel like it's because the problems that trigger the depression itself are multifaceted and some are big, but it's very hard to isolate exactly which trigger causes the inevitable depression. But it seems like every student who goes through that period goes through depression. So yeah, let's talk about it. Um, Not the depression per se, but yeah, the things leading up to the depression and the things that make the depression persist. Because I feel like we all feel like we are smart enough to, you know, like you said, Hore, at one point you learn to be more self introspective, and you thought that you were micromanaging these emotions and all these mental states, and somehow they slipped out. How do they slip up? Why do they slip up? This is what the sketch is aimed at. So before I delve too much into it, let's start with Lamont.
Yeah.
Like, what's your interpretation of blind horror?
Well, as I mentioned previously, there is a stage where you come to terms with the fact that this is not an uncommon feeling
Mm,
anymore. Like you you might feel alone, you might feel like sort of lost in the system,
mm-hmm,
but these feelings aren't necessarily something that other people don't experience, although you personally might be experiencing them for the first time.
mm,
And because you're experiencing them for the first time, well, for some people have been dealing with this since high school. I didn't really
mm,
understand it back then,
mm,
but I started appreciating it more once I got into the university cycle in that system.
mm,
So I guess the easiest way or the most direct way to interpret this would be the frustration that comes with the fact that you're not as able to control your emotions as you may have thought.
mm,
Not necessarily from an outward perspective in terms of, I don't know, some people might lash out or you get angry or you don't act any differently to
mm,
other people, but internally you know that you feel different
mm,
and you are going through a lot,
mm,
basically, which I think was also the irony in this picture,
mm,
because even though the emotions are very clear on that person's face,
mm,
you'd never necessarily see that on
mm,
my face, for example.
mm,
I wouldn't be walking around like that. That's more
mm.
of an internal struggle. And I think one thing that I should have mentioned, so this is the man that's in the hand.
I was about to mention that the
Yeah.
minute you touched on that,
Yeah.
I was like, yeah,
This is the
but
man that's
I'll
in the
introduce
hand.
that. Yeah.
So it's the idea that you can't necessarily see him. All we saw was were the two hands initially in the hand and the reach in
Mm,
the previous sketch. So now we get a closer look at him, which again is the idea of internalized emotions rather than the outward emotions that people would expect
mm,
or that people would sort of be able to appreciate more somehow.
mm.
So yeah, that's I think
The
the interpretation of it, and I think it's the most direct of the sketches out of all of
mm,
it. If you
yeah.
didn't understand anything else,
Mm,
this in a way sort of summarizes and is, like you said, the climax or the quintessential piece in this entire
yes.
thing.
Amazing word.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to piggyback on that, like what you said, or this is the quintessential piece of all these pieces, and the reason why is because yeah, this is a phase most of us would probably have, but wouldn't put on while we're going outside or while we're meeting our peers, our friends, anybody who went into your, I think, personal space. It's very unlikely that they see this particular face, you crying, go le botlhoko, but at the same time, it's because they see the outer hands. And like he said, this inner face, this is the face of the person who was, stretching out that hand. Or mo sketch number two, like this is the first time when mo di sketching tsena perspective ya rona e nna so clear e leng gore we are looking at that particular person, that reaching out hand. What is it reaching for? And that's where we get to the fourth explanation, the extent, the application, or something's range. What was the extent of actually going out there? What was the price we paid? And I feel like the biggest price was, the erosion of our mental health. Everybody's mental health has been eroded. Even students by locally hela batswa from, remote areas or rural areas. I feel like they go through the same thing,
Yeah.
but somehow it gets more pronounced as the distance
Yeah.
becomes more pronounced as well.
And as the culture is completely different.
Exactly, the culture is completely different. You don't see but you no longer see a familiar face. And last time we spoke about a saying, yeah, give a man a mask and you shall see that true face. It's usually when people think they're hiding, when they become their most vulnerable. And I feel like at some point that's that's what happened. We became our vulnerabilities and we wore our masks, but nobody could really see.
Yeah.
We
What
showed
was going
everybody
on.
what they wanted to see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think also what we thought they should see.
yeah.
Because earlier we talked about that strength, or that ego, and that strength that you thought you had,
Mm,
that ultimately fails you, because now you're dealing with monsters that are far beyond you, that you've never faced before. So whatever strength that you would have had on a platform that is at home, with your comfort, within your comfort and with your support system, now you don't have that strength anymore, because these are weights that you've never trained with. um, and I think a lot of the time we often talk about, oh, the depression, but we never really talk about the things that actually cause the depression. Because I mean, okay, how do I even put this? I think a lot of the time, because students come out to say, no, my mental health is eroded, but when you actually go to the point of asking, what is the issue? Either we don't know how to articulate it, we don't know if these people that we're telling will actually understand the way that I'm trying to articulate it. Also, we are kind of, a lot of us are new to these emotions, and we are also trying to figure out, what actually am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? Um, and the different struggles that we faced, like from the previous discussion that we had, in the prior sketch. Now those struggles are compounding, and they're just coming all at the same time, new ones as well. And then at the end of it, you're just like, you know what, I can't do it, anymore.
It's
It's
overwhelming.
too much. And then there's a compounded effect, yeah, it's too much, there's nobody there to help you, and now you're like, yeah, no, get suit. So I think a lot of what students go through is lost in the smoke, yeah. No, guys, can I my mental health, and yes, your mental health, but tell us what exactly is going on. um and I think that's where that disconnect then comes,
Comes in.
because people don't really understand what it is we're going through, and can't explain it, and they can't really help us, because they're also like, whoa, okay, what am I supposed to do?
Exactly.
And I think the other thing is that we usually talk about it after the fact. So now it's like, either the damage is like really, really done, and I can't really do anything about it now, or it's like, as an individual, I'm a bit more removed from what was going on at that time, or what was going on within me, that I just feel like, how do I even tap back into those emotions to really articulate what it was that was going on?
And then going back to the shareholders' point of view, the stockholders, uh, the stakeholders. Sorry. Yeah. The I want to let's look at this perspective. Yeah, the government. Like, what do you think goes through the government's, thinking faculties? Hela, ha ba bona e le gore, um, majority of the Canada are sending top achieving students
Oh, yeah.
into this machine, and somehow hababoa, it's either the depression reduces them to average students or just absolutely bad students. It's a very small proportion of students who actually maintain the top achiever
That's
status.
true.
Yeah.
Ha ba setse ba go boa kwa. And it's just there like, is this really a, I don't want to say is it really a good program, but are we really doing enough proportionally to make sure that this product that we're investing so much money into is actually giving us the results tse e leng gore ra di batla, without it feeling like a gamble? Because right now it feels like these guys are sending us out there, and it's the ones who can go through all these stages and fare much better ke bona ba e leng gore ba tla ba boa ba le better. And it's like a gladiator sport.
Yeah.
Or let's invest 100 kids, and
Yeah.
even if we get
Two.
20 kids back,
Yeah.
the rest ba tla e le gore ba tla ba tlhakatlhakanyeditswe.
Shelleke.
We did our part.
Yeah.
But at the same part, it's,
Did they really?
did they really do their part?
I think the question that we should really ask is, do they consider what actually happens to these students? You go, yeah, you're feeding students into the machine, like you're saying, but has anybody actually sat down and said, hold on, what's actually going on here? Because it's been years the government has been sending
Yeah,
students out,
exactly.
and nothing has actually been done to address
The-
dikgang tse e leng gore di a tswa.
And I think it's the major issue. That's the hardest. That it's the major issue. Like if they felt like, oh, okay, let's find a way to improve the program as it is, and they made a short list and brainstormed the problems we are probably facing. That's probably the paramount one.
Yeah.
For the depression.
Yeah.
That's the one they should be thinking about most importantly. And I feel like they take a very light stance when it comes to it, because ya ka re bua, ke feel gore that guardianship responsibilities they have given rona ha re tsena ka kwa ba re di busetsa, and na bana gore like you're your own parent, make sure you know how to deal with your own emotions, deal with yada yada yada,
Yeah.
which everybody is expectant of. But yeah, ka re bua gona gore the fact that you are 100,000 miles away from home, it just makes everything a whole lot worse, because it means majority of the people by long le ba ne le gore they were strong enough to go through this unscathed, ba go heletsa ba le affected because they don't have, number one, that support system e re buang ka yone, where they have an outlet to actually release all these micro aggressive things that happen to them. Gore ha o kgona go tsena ko lapeng and tell your mom gore, hey, oh lady, I had a problem today, I had a bad day, I will bua for 30 minutes. It may feel like it's nothing, but
That's a
that
lot.
is something you don't get an opportunity to do. How so to go sekolong kwa sebetse, you can't be calling your mom o molela gore, hey, cause you see ka pura pura, they're just gonna look at you, and to some extent le batho ba e leng gore wa dira, not necessarily tlhoagalo, because they won't say that in those words, but they would always feel like, oh, ra go tshepa, like we know you.
Yeah.
Come on, we know you, Lamont, man. You've been number one since yada yada yada.
Kindergarten.
And Lamont is telling them, "What guys, like,
Yeah.
this is what I'm going through."
That's essentially where the frustration that's represented in that face comes from, because you are thinking about all the things both of you have just mentioned simultaneously, and usually the conclusion or the solution that you come to in that moment is, if I just keep pushing on, things will work themselves out. That's usually what happens in the moment. Of course, now we're speaking retrospectively, like being able to look back and be like, oh, we could have done this different. But in the moment when you're there, the solution, because again, I'll meet Kanono if Kanono's a good friend of mine in the UK. I'll see him occasionally, and we might have a brief conversation like, yo, hey, or whatever. I'm going through this and this. We'll have a brief conversation about it, and we're both going through it, but neither of us would ever suggest to the other, hey, call your mom or call so and so. No one ever really comes with that. The solution is usually, now let's go out, or it's not even a solution, but you're sort of just trying to get away from the problem and escape and just focus on, because at the end of the day, you have to succeed at what you're there for. So regardless of how you feel, you put that in the back burner because there's a goal here. And that's the main issue, and it's a tricky thing because I don't know how you tell someone to solve it, because the fact that we're speaking about it retrospectively might help someone to deal with it, but I know it feels very different in the moment, because all you're thinking about is I need to complete this thing regardless of how I feel, and essentially my emotions don't matter, or they shouldn't matter in this moment, because I need to get this done.
And I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
And I think homo within our culture as well. It's no secret that our culture moharona does not really, I'm gonna say, respect the heart issues and the mind issues. It's about, okay, what are you doing? What's the job? How do you do it? Let's go. You know, it's about results. And I think that's also the relationship that we have with our custodians. Okay, so that's the material, aspect of things. But no, you need to get your money, you need to work hard, whatever, right? And then the results. Send the results. They hold allowance hostage. Allowance until they decide the results. And it's like, is that really all that is there? And I think that culture that we've been brought up in as Botswana, and also I think the culture that maybe the government would be operating under is, okay, what we're here for is school. It's in a school, and you need to produce results. And that's it. I don't. What is this mental health thing? Like, and I think also because moharona only now is, mental health awareness actually becoming a thing. Only is it now that people are starting to educate people about this thing, because I mean, even the Bible says, from like, guard your heart above all things, guard your heart, because out of it flows all the matters of life. So if your heart is not right, every single thing is going to be
it's gonna crumble,
right? idea and the goals and all those results that you should produce, low.
And back to this again, I feel like this is excavated by the fact that people this side expect the world to be wet. Even though you tell them, it's like somebody calling you, but when it's dry, it's just there like, hey, come on, man, be serious, man, be serious. Hey. And then mathata thing in that disconnect, you're telling people, guys, it's not all, it's not as it seems, or there's more than meets the eye here, and I might have bit more than I could chew. How do I get out of this? Not necessarily the program itself, but how do I deal with 1, 2, 3? And you don't get that.
And the people you could possibly even talk to have absolutely no perspective of what you're talking about.
Exactly.
They've never been in that situation. So even the help that they could potentially give you, or the advice that they could potentially give you, is really not going to be suited for the environment that you're in.
Yeah.
But likely we'll talk about it, more about it on the next sketch, which is there.